Yeah, hello, ladies and gentlemen, friends of philosophy, friends of the sun. We are continuing with our reading of Saint Augustine, who used to be a thug like us, but then he took a pear from a tree, referencing the famous story where he just stole pears. I don't know how you say it. Pears. Oh, pears, without even wanting them or without being hungry, just for doing evil. And that's a usual question, because today we come to the question, are babies evil? And if somebody says that, that's a peddling from St. Augustine, because of course they are evil, since evil is stored in the semen since Adam, and it's like the doctrine of the original sin. However, I don't think it's that important. It arises in Book 1, where it talks about his infancy, and I think it should actually demonstrate a kind of modesty that he shows before, because thinking God is not an easy thing, right? A lot of you probably assume, well, God, like, yeah, this is the man with a white beard in heaven, and that's so stupid that Christians think that they are so stupid, so stupid, so stupid. But it's a bit stupid to say that about others without really considering their concept. Now, there are Christians who may think it like that, but usually God is way more thought in a conceptual way, that it is the greatest concept of all, that it's the power of all powers, the most powerful being. Like, it is an entity, but, well, I mean, does it have human characteristics? He made us in the image of him, right? I'm not a Christian, that's what I have to say here, right? But I think we need to be charitable with Christians first and try to really think their concepts. But that's enough for the beginning. We should actually jump into the text. And it just starts, I hope it's big enough. Hear me, O God, who to the sins of woe to the sins of man. When a man cries, thus thou showest him mercy, for thou didst create the man, but not the sin in him. So everything good comes from God, but somehow humans, they diverge from God, and therefore the sins are from them. And then we have the important sentence, for in thy sight there is none free from sin, not even the infant who has lived but a day upon this earth. However, now we may wonder, what is the sin? In what ways in that time did I sin? Was it that I cried for the breast? However, in the example that follows, it's really hard to understand how children can actually be sinners. So it seems normally in a religion we assume that sin is related to a deliberate choice. That is not the case in the example he mentions. So he says there's a baby that cries so that it gets food. If an adult, however, cries because he wants food that is suitable to him, he would be rebuked. Now, a baby is not rebuked because it couldn't understand, but the behavior is somewhat wrong. But we don't rebuke it because it doesn't understand. So I think what he says is the weakness and the sin of the baby lies in its body, but not in its mind. So simply being a body means to be bad, and then we weed out the bad habits as we grow older. As we grow, we root out and cast away from us such childish habits, and we try to keep the good ones. Thus, the infant's innocence lies in the weakness of his body and not in the infant mind. I have myself observed a baby to be jealous, though it could not speak. It was livid as it watched another infant at the breast. So yeah, I'm not completely understanding the strategy here, but it seems he says in another example now, this is the example of jealousy, right? that here we wouldn't consider a baby as innocent, but here it is obviously a mindful understanding, because when the milk is flowing fresh and abundantly, why then should another one who needs it should not be allowed to share it, even though he requires such nourishment to sustain his life? We look leniently at it, but actually it's a sin. Yeah, but I don't understand, okay, when he gets this example now, why does he have the other kind of introduction? Okay, so it seems we have two sins here, the sin of the body and the sin of the mind, which both occur in children. Okay, so and then he prays against to God for forgiving him the sins that he also cannot remember, but that he has observed in others, and where he assumes that it's also true for him. Let's go to chapter 8. Okay, so he goes on with the famous passages of explaining how he became a chattering boy and how he learned language. A language acquisition theory that many linguists nowadays disagree with, and it's quite famous because also Wittgenstein cites this passage in its philosophical investigations, so therefore I read it as a whole. When they called something by name, my parents, and pointed it out while they spoke, I saw it and realized that the thing they wished to indicate was called by the name they then uttered, and what they meant was made plain by the gestures of their bodies, by a kind of natural language common to all nations, which expresses itself through changes of countenance, glances of the eye, gestures, and intonations, which indicate a disposition and attitude either to seek or to possess, to reject or to avoid. So it was that by frequently hearing words in different phrases, I gradually identified the objects which the words stood for, and having formed my mouth to repeat these signs, I was thereby able to express my will. Yeah, and this is probably not how it works, because like the identification of a sign with an object is probably not how language works. Language probably works way more in a syntactic sense on the layer of sentences. So, of course, he wants to tell this to confess another sin. And what is the sin here? Well, when he goes to school, he distinguished himself through these tricks that he learned in speech. And basically, he tried to gain honor through it. And also when he was praying, small as I was, I prayed with no slight earnestness that I might not be beaten at school. So he does some lying here, right? And also in school, he was not learning as much as he could. Well, so far so good. I suggest chapter 10. I mean, okay, we read chapter 10 too. Yeah, we just read this because he also confesses his sins, right? I sinned, O Lord my God, in acting against the precepts of my parents and of those teachers. I love the vanity of victory. So yeah, we may say, well, how is confessing a real sin? Well, he really wants to tell us everything. But he was not such a bad boy, right? He was not such a bad boy. So yeah, Augustinus confessing a sin is maybe disappointing for somebody who really seeks for sins. What is interesting so far is that he tries to understand himself as an imperfect being that somehow tries to relate to perfection. Why to perfection? Let's call it like that way, to something that is greater than him. And we all have something that is greater than us, from which we stem. I mean, some of my friends argue, well, we could be born from chaos or from nothing. Maybe that's true. I don't have the capacities to discuss that here. Question would be, where does the principle of order come from? Did order generate itself then, and should we follow order at all? Or does nothing really matter? What do you think? Let me know in the comments. If this is helpful, give me a positive comment. we all need that. We are all having these vanities. Anyway, I will proceed with this a little bit more. I said to myself, you have to do this more. It's also good for my understanding. I hope it helps you too. If it helps you, then like and subscribe. For the rest, live long, confess your sins, and prosper.